This is O Pioneers by Willa Cather. We will begin with nature as our teacher. In O Pioneers, Alexandra credits much of her success with farming to land. She continually depends on the land to learn about how to best farm. This is seen when Carl was complimenting her on her success with the farm, and she replies, "We hadn't any of much to do with it, Carl. The land did it. It had its little joke. It pretended to be poor because nobody knew how to work it right. And then, all at once, it worked itself. It woke up out of its sleep and stretched itself, and it was so big, so rich, that we suddenly found we were rich, just from sitting still." This illustrates how Alexandra doesn't accredit her own knowledge, but the overall wisdom of nature to her success. This relates to the theme of learning life lessons from nature that occurs throughout the story. This is seen in both Alexandra and Ivar when they have a deeper connection with nature, which has a direct correlation to their success with the land. This is similar to the theme of learning from nature that is seen in Robert Frost's poem Nothing Gold Can Stay, where he says, "So Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes to day, nothing gold can stay." This shows how Frost is learning life lessons from nature, how nothing good can stay, much like how the gold light from a sunset cannot always stay. It is constantly fading. But Frost and Cather are discussing the theme of how nature teaches us important life lessons. They believe that if you just slow down to listen, you can learn amazing things. Our next point is dangerous spaces. Additionally, O Pioneers hits on the topic of dangerous spaces. This is seen when Alexandra is really depressed about the death of her brother and best friend and goes to visit his grave. While she's out, a huge rainstorm hits and she is trapped. After Ivar found her after the storm, she seems to have achieved some mental clarity after being stuck in such a dangerous space. For example, she says, "Ivar, I think it has done me much good to get cold clear through like this once. I don't believe I shall suffer much any more. When you get so near to dead, they seem more real than the living. Worldly thoughts leave on." She found that after she was stuck in the rain, she understood what it was like after you die, and it was almost like she was being brought back to the beginning of her life. This is similar to, in the story, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. When he is in a dangerous space, he escapes much like Alexandra and finds a place of peace. For example, it says, as he pushes open the gates and passes up the wide white walk, he sees a flutter of female garments. His wife, looking fresh and cool and sweet, steps down from the veranda to meet him. Later, it is revealed that Peyton Farquhar was dead, and his body with a broken neck swung gently from side to side beneath the timbers of the Owl Creek Bridge. This relates to the theme of finding peace in treacherous times in both the short story and O Pioneers. The author seemed to believe that you can find peace even in the darkest times, much like a human survival instinct. Cather also speaks on small towns and big city life. She seems to discuss a lot about the theme of the struggles of living in a small town. This is seen when Alexandra is discussing her feelings on living in a small town. For example, she says, ever since she's come back, she's been perfectly cheerful, and she says she's contented to live and work in a world that is so big and interesting. She said that anything as big as the bridge over the Platte in Missouri reconciled her, and it's what goes on in the world that reconciles me. For Alexandra, knowing that there's a big, beautiful world out there, it provides her with peace, and it makes living in a small town more bearable. Similarly, in Our Town by Thornton Wilder, he speaks on the struggles of small-town living when Miss Gibbs says, "Once in your life, before you die, you aren't to see a country where they don't talk in English and don't even want to." This illustrates that both Wilder and Cather believe that small towns can almost be suffocating, but the outside world provides small-town residents with peace. In O Pioneers, they also discuss the idea of how difficult migration is. They struggle to fit in, and the town still seems pretty divided based on what country they come from. They are also expected to abandon their old culture and adopt American customs. This is seen when Ivar is afraid they are going to send him away to the insane asylum because the other people in town think he's crazy. For example, he says, "At home in the old country, there were many like me who had been touched by God or had seen things in the graveyard at night and were different. We thought nothing of it and let them alone. But here, if a man is different in his feet or in his head, they put him in the asylum." This illustrates how he's having a hard time finding his own way in keeping with the culture of his homeland. This is similar to the poem To Live in the Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa, where she struggles to balance her two cultures. For example, she says, "In the borderlands, you are a battleground where enemies kin to each other. You are at home, a stranger. The border disputes have been settled in the volley of shots and have been scoured the truce. You are wounded, lost in action, fighting back." Both of these quotes relate to the common theme of struggling to find your place when migrating to a new land. Both Anzaldúa and Cather believe that it's difficult to find your place when you're from somewhere else, and they speak on these challenges. Here's my works cited. Thank you so much.